Hi folks, I have just finished looking at the learning contracts that have been submitted and provided feedback for them. Now, there is a common theme in the feedback in the learning contracts, and it appears to be that you're getting a bit confused about the learning outcomes and how we phrase the learning outcomes. Now, in the learning outcomes, we require there to be a verb at the beginning or somewhere within the learning outcome, because what you're going to have to do is you write a statement that's going to tell us how you're going to be able to evidence that you've learned what you intended to learn. So just providing a statement within similar to, for example, um, the evidence underpinning an aspect of practice. Okay, so it might be the evidence um, relating to the use of temazepam for reduction of anxiety. That's not enough as a learning outcome. What you're required to provide is a statement that says, for example, appraise the evidence or provide a critical analysis of the evidence that underpins the use of temazepam for anxiety. So there has to be a stem, a verb stem for the learning outcomes. So I'll just give you some examples on the board here if I can. So for example, if your interest was in relation to for example, colorectal surgery. Okay, I'm only quoting that because that was my clinical background. So what you might put down as a learning outcome, or typical of what I have seen in the contract, is something along the lines of the anatomy and physiology of the lower GI tract. Okay, so a statement somewhere along those lines. The anatomy and physiology of the lower GI tract, and I can understand why you would want to learn about that, why that's important. But for a learning outcome, you have to tell the reader, you have to tell the examiner what it is you're going to be able to do in relation to that, that will demonstrate that you have learned and demonstrate the level of learning. So, for example, at level 9, at this academic level, um, recalling something really isn't enough. That's sort of levels 1 and 2, first and second year of university. So recalling something wouldn't be enough. We're looking for you to begin at a higher level than that. So, for example, in relation to the anatomy and physiology, um, we might be looking for you to explain. I'll do it in red. So, explain the anatomy and physiology of the lower GI tract. Okay, so there always has to be a verb. Now, I have posted some resources online. There, the term you're looking for is Bloom's taxonomy, but within one of the SWAY files, I'm sure it's the week 4 SWAY file, there is reference to Bloom's taxonomy, and there are some resources there that tell you some of the verbs to use, what level the verbs are at, when we would expect to see them, what academic levels and things. You really need to return to those and start to put your learning outcomes together using that approach, using Bloom's taxonomy and the verbs that are associated with this level of academic study. Okay, so for those learning outcomes that have commented, and I've commented on a few that they're incomplete, that's why they're incomplete. We don't have a verb. You really have to identify what it is that the examiner is going to see or the assessor is going to see in your work that demonstrates that you have achieved the level of learning that you intended to. Okay, if you're still struggling with it, please get in touch with me and we can talk through it in a wee bit more depth. I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to discuss anything that anyone needs some assistance with. Please don't stop your literature searching or your reading at the moment. Most of you, I'm confident, know what it is that you're going to be focusing on, so you will be able to engage with the literature, you will be able to pull some material together. It's just the technical language used in the learning contract that you're having difficulty with. So please don't feel that you can't proceed until this is finished. Hopefully by the end of week 5, these will all be finished and signed off. If you haven't submitted one already, it's important you get in touch with me as soon as possible to explain your circumstances, and we can make arrangements to retrieve that. If we get to the end of week 5 and I haven't heard from you, then there is every possibility we would have to withdraw you from the module, okay? Because there is just too much work to retrieve once we get to that point if you don't have a learning contract. Okay, so I hope that's explained what I mean in the feedback that I've given, that a learning outcome is incomplete. Another thing I'll just touch on as well is when we begin to talk about the specific content. Now, you have in your learning contract, the first column is the learning outcomes, yeah, and you've got those 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, the column next to that is headed specific content. Now again, I urge you to go back to the SWAY file and look at the resources that I've posted in relation to developing and completing a learning contract, because it clearly states there that the specific content should only be statements, should only be nouns if you want. There's no verbs. The specific content doesn't relate to things that you're going to do. The specific content would relate to the learning outcomes and what it is that you're going to have to learn about in order to achieve the learning outcome. So if we go back to this learning outcome here, okay, where we're saying explain the anatomy and physiology of the lower GI tract, in the specific content, I would expect to see things then like the anatomy and physiology of the lower GI tract. Because if you're going to explain it, no, you're going to have to learn about it. So that's what specific content is. It's those areas of knowledge that you're going to have to explore. When you move on then to the learning activities, which is a third column, that's when you do have verbs. So you move from the learning outcome, yeah, to the specific content, and then you decide, okay, how am I going to access that content? One way might be by reading textbooks, or by discussing with specialists in the field, or by reviewing the literature. Yeah. So learning outcomes start with a verb. Tell us how you're going to demonstrate you have learned. Yeah. Specific content is just a list of things that you're going to have to learn about. Okay. No verbs, just a list of things you're going to have to learn about. And the learning activities then is how you're going to access this content. Yeah. Are you going to access it through reading, discussing with specialists, working in the field? Yeah. All of these sort of things. Okay, so hopefully that explains things a wee bit better. Please, as I say already, get in touch with me if you need it explained a wee bit more, and I can have a chat with you. I don't have a problem with it at all. But it's important that you put every effort this week into getting this completed, but not holding back on your reading, building up the literature that you're going to be using to support your final assessment. Okay, guys, thanks very much.